Hey guys, in this video we're going to be going from the start to the finish of the setup for the KSC, the MoviChip KSC. The KSC monitors your knock sensor, and when it detects knock, it will output a 12 volt signal and also a 5 volt signal that can go to an external ECU. So the setup process starts in the app. First of all, we need to connect it to our phone. Once we've done that, we open the options menu and we press off for baseline calibration. Once we press off, that will output the current settings for the app. So once we've got that, we need to do some basic checks here. So first of all, the shared volume settings here, we need to increase them to something, to a relatively big number, say 40 or something like that. We'll just put these numbers high. This is the threshold number. We're putting them high because we don't want the knock to be suppressed. We need to be able to listen to the knock. We also need to set the mid and red line RPM. So for this demonstration, we're going to set the mid RPM at 3000 and the red line at 5000. This will come in later, but it's good just to get it out the way at the start. So our first step to be able to monitor knock on an engine, we need to know what frequency the knock happens at. We need to go to our ignition timing and set up an ultra conservative ECU map where we know that the engine is definitely not knocking. So for example, I'm going to put in here -6 degrees. So we'll just write that to the ECU. We can be fairly certain that when we listen to the knock sensor now, we're not going to be picking up any knock. Next step is to go into the knock ID menu, and this is going to give us a picture of the intensity, the noise intensity coming from the knock sensor in normal driving across a number of frequency bands. So I'm just going to put on the knock ID now. I'll put it into third gear. We'll just do a little pull here. I'm just going to go sort of 2000 to sort of 3500. And before I lift the accelerator, I'm going to press off. So we're not having any spurious readings coming from the knock sensor. And then we can see it's outputted a line there, which tells us the peak signal intensity that we've had from the knock sensor in each of these frequency bands. So again, we're at sort of 1500 RPM. I'm just going to switch it on here. And then I'm just going to give it, a relatively big load here, full throttle, up to about 3,500 RPM. And again, before I lift off, I'm just going to press off. What we have here across the lines, at the top row, we've got, starting at the top left, we've got 4.5 to 5.4K. This is frequency, so we're looking at 4.5 kilohertz to 5.4 kilohertz. And then the next number then is the intensity, the peak intensity it recorded when the knock ID was on. And that goes across the entire line then. So the next one, we've got 5.4 kilohertz to 6.3 kilohertz. Max intensity was 9. Go to the next one, 6.3 kilohertz to 7.2 kilohertz was 5, and so on and so forth. And we can see, if we go through them, there's a bit of difference, but they're kind of in the same ballpark. So if you go down the column, which is 4.5 to 5.4, we can see we've got 11, 9, 11. The next one over, we've got 9, 6, 7. The next one over, we've got 5, 4, 4. And the next one over, we've got 5, 5, 9, which is a bit of a bigger difference, but we'll see if that affects us later. The next one is 4, 6, 6, 3, 5, 4, 5, 4, 4, and 5, 4, 3. So we've got possibly one that's a bit more out than what we would like. Maybe there was a touch of knock there, but I think it's a good baseline. So the next step, we are going to put it to knock at 2100 RPM, 2187 RPM for the purpose of this demonstration. I'm going to put quite a hefty value in here. I'm going to put an 8. So we're going to be taking it very easy with the throttle. Let me just switch it on. I'll just put it into third gear to get us down to 2100 RPM. I'll just give it a bit of gas. We'll just pull the car over and have a closer look at the at the numbers. So the first three are without the ignition timing, and the following four are with. So you can see 4.5 to 5.4, not really much difference there. If anything, it's less. 5.4 to 6.3, basic, very close to what it was before. The 6.3 to 7.2, we can see that we've got a 15 and a 10 here, which would tell me that that is a good frequency to monitor for knock. And then we've got the next one over 7.2 to 8.1. We're kind of the same as it was before. I don't think there's much point in us looking at the others. 9 to 9.9, maybe there's something there. But the theoretical knock frequency for this engine is 7.2 kilohertz. So we're looking for something in that area. So I'm happy here to say that like 6.3 to 7.2 is the knock frequency for this engine. So we'll just come here and we'll put in 6.3 to 7.2. So now we know our knock frequency. We can go back to our ignition timing and we'll set that to a conservative number again, because this time we want to know what is a normal intensity for the knock sensor signal at that frequency in normal driving. The next step will be using the baseline calibration, and not only will this tell us what is a normal volume from the engine when it's not knocking. Coming up to a straight here, so we'll just give it you know, full throttle up to 5,000 RPM. And again, we're going to be pressing off before we lift off the accelerator, and then that will output the peak volume that it heard, or the peak intensity that it received from the knock sensor, and also at what RPM it outputted it at. So we're seeing that at 1200 RPM it got a 2, at 3000 RPM it got a 3, and at 4200 RPM it got a 10. So those are going to be our normal operating volumes. So we come down to the baseline calibration menu, the plus and the minuses, and then we're just going to reduce the thresholds here. Well, we're going to set the threshold to something slightly above the peak that it registered. So in this case it's going to be 3, 4, and we'll put the top on that as 11. And that is the setup of it. The next step is to re-advance the ignition timing and to check that it is receiving and it is recognizing knock. So that is what we'll do next. We're going to advance the ignition timing at 2187 RPM to we'll say 7 degrees. When the KSC outputs the signals to say that it's detecting knock, the ECU, when it receives that signal, will retard the ignition timing by 6. And what we are looking for here is when the engine approaches 2100 for us to get the LED. Let's just do it again. Again, this is all part of the setup process here, guys, fine-tuning. If you can obviously hear, but the KSC is not picking it up, then we need to adjust something, whether it be the threshold, lower it, or perhaps we need to expand the frequency that we've chosen. As it is on this, we've got 6.3 to 7.2. Theoretical knock frequency for this engine is 7,200. So if we're not picking up the knock for some reason, then I would increase that number there, the 7,200, to the next one, so 7,650 for example. Okay, so it's picked it up there, knocked once. I think what I will do is I'll come to the screen and I'm going to increase the top frequency to 7650. I think maybe it's not picking it up fully. Just park in the middle of the road, why don't you? Now we can see there we got it there now. And you can just about hear it as well from through the window. We can see it's picking it up very nicely now. So again, we can see that it's picking it up with a visual indicator, and that will also be outputting a 5-volt signal to the piggyback ECU. So now that's basically the setup all done. We've identified the frequency, and we've identified the thresholds. So what I can do now, just want to show you what it looks like on the log that we'll do with the piggyback ECU, so you can see how that affects the ignition timing. If I can just find somewhere to park up here. Okay, what was I going to do? Okay, so yeah, show you the log. We'll go to the log. We'll enable the log. Got knock there, and let's have a look at the log to see what happened. We've got the load here, and we can see the ignition timing increasing. So this will be first gear where we didn't have any knock. This is second gear, didn't have any knock, and then this is third gear where it detected knock here, and we can see it retarding the ignition down to -6 degrees, which is what we have in the correction table, to go down to -6 degrees. You'll see here that it continued to retard ignition timing after the load had dropped, and that's because the KSC outputs the warning, and when it no longer detects knock, it will take 2 seconds to stop sending that warning signal. If you've got any questions about all of this, feel free to leave a comment down below, or you can send us an email through the MoviChip website. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a great night. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again in the next video.